fellow crafters, I'm Karen, and this is the fourth video in the Peppermint Christmas series. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make these peppermint icicles out of clay. In keeping with the theme of a peppermint Christmas, this craft is going to maintain the traditional red and white stripes that we recognize as a peppermint. However, this one is going to be a variation on the shape. So instead of using your traditional round, circular peppermint shape, we're going to be making the red and white stripe pattern in icicles. To do this, you'll need the materials and tools that are up on the screen, the primary of which is the oven bake clay. So for this I'll be using Sculpey red and white clay. You'll want to use clay that is the same brand for both colors, just so that you don't have to deal with any differences in type of clay or baking criteria, for lack of a better word. I'll be working on parchment paper just to keep the red clay from dyeing anything red. And I also purchased little eye hooks, so I'll show you those. These are called head pins, and I found them in the jewelry section at the craft store. This happens to be 150 of them, which is way more than I'll need. But I was basically looking for something that would be a post with just a little eye at the top so that I could run either string or just a metal ornament hanger through the top. And these will be mounted in each of the icicles so that there's a way to actually hang them. The goal is that we'll be able to make sort of almost individual icicle shapes, but four, so a red, a white, and a white, alternating, and then twist them together. So to do that, we're going to need to make individual pieces or almost strings of clay, roll it out so it's thinner on one end than the other, make sure they're all roughly the same size, and then we can kind of twist them and squeeze them together. The red that I have here, and it wouldn't matter what shade of red you get, this one happens to be called Deep Red Pearl, and it's almost sparkly looking, so I think that will be beneficial to this project. But my experience with other red clay has shown me that it will turn your hands bright red. So I'm just going to actually take this in the chunks that are naturally marked out on the clay, so it's a quarter of the clay. And you have to work the clay first, sort of knead it like you would bread dough. And we're just trying to soften it up. It's pretty stiff when it starts, which it makes it actually kind of a challenge to work. But you just want to work it as much as you can until it's soft, and then we'll be able to roll it. So let me work these four pieces, and then we'll go ahead, and I'll need to probably wash my hands before I can go ahead and do the same thing with the white. Okay, so I have four little balls here of red clay. You can already see what it's doing to the color of my hand. And I just want to roll it out pretty smoothly. We'll have to see how thin this gets to determine if this is going to become just one peppermint or, sorry, one icicle or two. I think I want my overall icicles to end at about 6 inches long, which is about where I'm at right now. So I have a feeling that this is actually going to become, for me, 2 icicles, because this would make for a really thick icicle. So I'm going to actually, let me just make sure these are roughly even halves here. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half, approximately. And then continue rolling this out. It may even become yet one more if it still looks like it's going to be too big around. And it'll be up to you, depending on how big around you want your icicle to be. Just remember that it's 4 times whatever you have. So if you want really thin icicles, then you could err on the side of smaller at this point. if you want thicker icicles, you could sort of stop here. If you want longer, you can always just extend them. But just remember that the thicker it is, the longer it'll take to bake. However, the thinner it is, the harder it may be to get the pieces to stick together and meld. And remember, it just has to be able to hold that head pin, the eye pin, whatever that was called. So, I think I'm on the right track here, but I'm going to go one more. Worst case scenario, I just have to smush it back together and do it again. So this, I think, will be my final product. So I'm trying to sort of thin it out. Put that over there. More on one side than the other, but at an even taper. So that it starts at its thickest, goes all the way down to a very minimal bit at the end. So just be gentle. I'm putting a little bit of pressure, but not much. And I'm moving side to side a little bit. Alright, that is about what I am looking for. It looks like a snake right now. And I'm going to make this one into the other side. And I actually started thinner on that side, so I've got to pay attention to what I'm doing here. And you want it to be about the same length as your first one, which I believe this is, so that looks about right. And now we need to have the equivalent in white. So I'm going to go ahead and roll out this set, and I'll set these three aside for now. And then we'll go ahead and make the equivalent in white. That last one, for whatever reason, seemed to be a little bit thicker and longer, so I just lopped a couple of pieces off the ends to make it about the same as the others. And these look about right, or at least about what I was expecting, so I need to wash the evidence off of my hands here. And I'm going to start with a new piece of parchment paper because there's actually a kind of pink shade to the parchment paper here. And I'll make the same thing in white, and then we'll combine them. I had to guess a little at how to make the equivalent volume of clay compared to one of the prepackaged pieces. I have a larger quantity of the white, and it's not the same thickness or height, for lack of a better word, so I had to estimate a little, but you can always make them slightly smaller if you need to, or even slightly bigger, although it does require more effort to go backwards and make them bigger. So I'm just going to try to take quarters of this, roughly, and roll out the equivalent white pieces to the red that I already have. I now have two sets of red and white, and I'll say that normally with any sort of decorating or designing, I would lean towards an odd number of things, and you can see that here I have even numbers. I have 4 of each. And my reasoning behind that in this particular craft is that you need at least one red and one white to make the pattern. I think it'll look like a more authentic peppermint sort of every other if there are at least 2 of each. But I don't think it's necessary to go up to 3 of each, and I think it would make for a bulkier icicle. So if you did want it to be better to look down at it from the top, You may want to do 3 of a kind, but I think that 2 of a kind, especially since it will twist and sort of spin internally, that 2 of a kind will be sufficient for 1 icicle. So what we need to do now is combine these into the actual striped icicle shape. And this is going to be a little bit experimental, so that's always exciting. But what I'm going to do is make my pattern here, every other. And I'm just giving them a little bit of a squeeze together, side to side. And what I'm going to do is chop off the excess here. I want them all to come to an equal point. And I may even go back a little to where they're all definitely even. Or rather, I'm making them all even. And we can fine-tune things later. And I want to grab one of my head pins at this point so I can sort of work it in. It was surprisingly challenging to get that out of the packaging. So all I'm going to do here is sort of place it in the middle, sticking out enough that you'll be able to get to the eye. And then I'm going to fold up my 2 edges up to each other. Give them a good squeeze. This is experimental for me, so I'm gonna see what a little bit of rolling will do here. I just need them to sort of fuse into one big peppermint, not 4 smaller peppermints. I think that went alright. I got a bit of a fuzzy in my white here. But it looks like it's going to be harder to fix than anything else. So the next step here will be just to twist it. So I'm going to start really right at the bottom. And I'm just sort of gently twisting, trying to be controlled about it, and make sure that no areas look more twisted or less twisted than others. And at the tip here, I'm just sort of squeezing it together to make a little point. And then the same thing at the top. I want to just sort of round them in. Nothing complicated or fancy, just making sure I don't block the hole. You could always use another one of these to sort of pull it back out if it goes in too far. Mine may have a little bit here. And at this point you're just thinking through sort of what you want to see as the final product, because there's really no changing it after you've baked it. So I think I'm happy with that. There's the peppermint. So I'm going to go ahead and make another one of these, exactly the same, and pop it in the oven. Alright, there you have it. 2 of those, and they are ready to be baked. So I'm going to put these in. Now the oven is at 275 for this type of clay, and it's supposed to be 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch. And at the thicker side here, it's probably 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to need at least 15 minutes. I'm going to put it in for 15, check it, and then I can always add more time if I need to. Okay, so I have the completed baked peppermint icicles. That's hard to say all in one shot. And I have just a couple of comments to make about that process. So this is what they look like. And I'm quite happy with how they turned out. I did notice that it looks like the white stripes either browned a little in the oven or like are showing any pinkness from the red clay. So they're slightly discolored compared to like the fresh white clay. But I think if you looked at them without comparison to something that's brighter white, you wouldn't really notice. So I'm not going to worry about that. I did check the pins, the head pins, and they seem to be holding very sturdily inside. So I had prepared some glue in case I would need to reinforce, but it does not appear to be necessary. So you will want to check those pins just to make sure that that they are going to hold, because you could always just, if they're loose, just pull it out, put a little bit of glue, maybe super glue or E6000 or something like that. Actually, this one is twisting a little in my grip here, but or if one were to ever come loose, you could always just pop some glue in there and then just let it dry. And then the other thing was baking time. So I originally put them in for 15 minutes, and I was expecting that to be a little bit less than necessary, so I did check them, and they were still kind of squishy as much as I could tell without like burning my fingers, and definitely very flexible. So I let them go for another 5 minutes, checked them, and they were still pretty flexible, so I did put them in for a final 5 minutes, which was a total of 25 minutes, and that time I thought they were closer, and there was more flex in them when they were warm. So just be aware that when they do cool down, like these are cool right now, they're fully sturdy. Like I can hold it even at the thinner end and it doesn't bend at all. So it may seem less done than it will be when it is cool. So just be aware of that and keep an eye on it. That may even be why the whites look a little bit browner. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. So the last step, and this is the easiest one, of course, is just to put a hanger through the loop. And I'm just using metal ornament hangers. You could use something like embroidery floss to hang these with, either red or white or even something else. But I think that this is plenty sufficient. So there you have it, finished product. Thanks for supporting Tickled Fancy Crafting by watching this video. Click the like button to let me know that you enjoyed the content, and subscribe to see new Tickled Fancy Crafting videos in your feed. If you'd like to be informed directly about the content, ring the notifications bell. Comment with crafts that you would like to see in the future, and remember, you can make this.